So, good day, everyone. We're here for another episode of the DVD show. So, for today, we have a former UST Golden Tigresses women's volleyball player, and she was also an analyst for the Philippine Super Liga when the league was still ongoing. And now she's a PBA courtside reporter, as you guys may know, as you see her on the sidelines giving those reports about the teams and the players. So, I'll now welcome here to the DVD show, Denise Tan. Thank you for joining me here on my podcast.
Hello, Diego, and thank you for having me. And I'd like to say hi to everybody supporting and watching the DVD show. Sana every episode, you guys keep watching Diego dahil ang dami niyang amazing guests on board all the time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, to start things off, to keep it light, I wanted to ask how you are. Like now, we're in the thick of things in the PBA playoffs as of this recording, and you mentioned when we were talking before the recording that you also had COVID and it was not a
Yes,
good experience for you in
thank
the middle of
goodness.
the playoffs. So yeah, how are you now on and off your work?
Well, thank goodness I'm all better now. The yung positive part of the COVID stitch was actually short, pero yung post-COVID symptoms, as I'm trying to clear my throat right now,
Mm,
I can still feel it, but I'm adjusting and I'm excited to be back. I actually covered the game yesterday.
yeah.
Um, and as you know, if you do watch the PBA, sobrang match na match talaga yung teams in the semifinals. So I'm one of the fans hoping na mag-extend siya to a game 7 on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I'm a Hinebra fan kasi ever since I was a kid. So now wala
So,
na yung Hinebra.
nanonood ka pa din ba ng semis dahil wala din
Yeah, of
kahit
course, syempre. So lahat naman ng games pinanonood ko.
Hmm,
So kaya nga, yeah, it's gonna be fun kung Game 7. I enjoy it lang. I don't really support anyone. I mean, you could root for the underdog, ganun. I mean,
yes.
sometimes ganun ako. Pero I enjoy whoever wins. I mean, I'm just enjoying the PBA now. Parang balance talaga lahat
Mhm.
ng teams eh. So yeah, it's a really exciting conference. But yeah, since before when you were in the bubble then, diba, you were covering and then now I mean we still have COVID here in the Philippines, but how is it like for you going back to like normal circumstances wherein there are a lot of fans now at the Araneta and you now
Mhm.
could like go to the players. I know you interview them pag mga press ko and you can ask them before the game again because for like
Mhm.
two seasons or 2 years walang ganun na access for courtside reporters.
Well, fortunately for me, I was part of the first bubble kasi in Clark. So,
Mm.
I had the chance to adjust right away. So, even when we were in one hotel, one accommodation, we weren't really given the freedom to just go up to them all the time. Ang hirap din
Yeah.
ng scheduling because we don't exactly know where they are. Sometimes they're at the gym, sometimes they're at the practice venue. May mga sleeping time din sila. So,
Yeah.
what we did is we tried to get all of their numbers and then
Oh, okay.
I started calling them.
Mm.
And that's how I tried to adjust during the bubble. So going back to the conference that we had right now and even the past one, medyo
Mm.
ganun na yung practice na ginagawa ko. Just so when I go to the venue, hindi ko na masyadong kailangan, you don't have to run around after each and every player. And
Yeah.
then you also lessen the risk of, the COVID, if ever because you never know na eh. Actually, even
Yeah.
if you try to, what do you call this, yung iba-backtrack mo kung sino yung nakahalubilo mo, parang there's no sense na nga in doing it
Mm.
because
Ang dami.
wala. You can't even
Yeah.
prove it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-mm. But again, going back to your original question, sorry, I was rambling.
It's
I
okay.
love the fans were there.
Mm.
Actually, Diego, the first I can distinctly remember the first game na may fans ulit. I was looking around and I was like, oh my God, may sumisigaw. Like,
Uh,
ang saya. Kasi
yeah.
kahit na sometimes you hear innocent like cheering, sometimes my profanity, parang
Yeah.
it's just so shocking and so amusing na wow, hindi na lang tayo dito. And you can
Mm.
feel na slowly things are going back to normal. Ganun kabigat yung effect of having the fans back. I think not just for the players, but for us also covering them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, ako rin nung nanood ako ng UAAP when I was covering for Lasal nga, and the first game ko parang I didn't cover right away. I was like a fan
Mhm,
now for that game against Ateneo. It felt so different coming back
mhm.
to like MOA Arena and having that feeling of watching sports again. Like when we were in 2020, I was like, when is it gonna happen again that I could go
Yeah.
back to the venue? So it's very exciting to have sports back in here in the Philippines. But you mentioned also the bubble, and you had a lot of learning experiences. Like you mentioned na iba na yung approach mo rin in contacting the players, which lessens the risk of having direct contact with them. So maybe are there other things that you learned from those two bubbles? I mean, the other one was like a semi bubble. Are there more things that you learned that you could apply now to your job, not necessarily as a courtside reporter, but like you have other sideline jobs as well?
Well, actually, I was just part of the first bubble in Clark. Pero the
Mm,
thing, one of the things I learned, it's so basic and it's funny because I've been doing this for quite some time, not just the PBA, but hosting here and there. But one of the silly things that I've never really learned how to do before joining the bubble was fix my hair, like curl it.
oh,
That's something that I had to do and had to learn on the spot because wala
mm,
kaming makeup artist. We had to do our own hair, we had to do our own makeup, and then on cam
mm,
ka almost every single day. So that's one thing that I'm applying now to like my
yeah,
everyday work, whether it's on or in and out of the PBA. Pero
mhm,
for the coverage, I think I learned how to, I guess, find better stories.
okay, yeah,
Kasi there's just so much that could happen inside the bubble. Of course, there's always the story of the players missing the families, of
yeah,
having this brand new schedule, of trying to get used to being confined in a certain space where you can really only go to the gym, to your
mhm,
to your room, and some of these grown men would have to share one room with another
yeah,
person, and that kind of story, those kinds of stories can only go so much. Like what, for a month you can't have that
yeah,
story over and over again, diba? So I think yun yung something that I learned, trying to research better,
mm,
I guess, making more connections also, not just with people who's part of the staff, reaching out to
mhm,
family members, reaching out to um, former teammates, former
yeah,
mentors, learning how to stalk them more, stalk them more because again, you have to try and explore more ideas kung saan may possible na kwento. So that's one thing that I think I'm still doing now, even if we're not in a bubble anymore.
yeah, I agree also because that's, I mean, me when I'm gonna interview someone then like for a podcast, and sometimes when you search them on
Mm.
Google, like it's ulit like, oh, everyone knows that na. So yeah, you just try to search more of their social media accounts on na nangyari nung 2015 or something, and then
Mm.
you could like talk about it, or there's an interesting story to it that not the other media outlets were able to cover. So yeah, that's great that other people could also learn from you. But then I also listened to your guesting with Migs Bustos in his podcast, and parang for you it was a no-brainer to go to the bubble, and
Oh
you
yeah.
saw it as like a positive to like get to yun nga, meet the players and learn more about their stories, and you have work and where in the time where others didn't have a job. So what other things did the lockdown what were the other good things that came out from you from the lockdown? Like you mentioned, you would research more, maybe you would listen to other videos or other shows. Like what were the other things that napulot mo rin na apply mo from to the bubble and the other succeeding conferences?
I think you know what, it's really more of the attitude that changed for me. I learned to be more grateful of the
Mm,
situation that I'm in. Starting with that bubble, starting with the pandemic, really, because before I went into the bubble, Diego, I was out of work for I think close to 8 or 9 months.
Yeah,
Um,
matagal na.
Matagal yon. So, of
Mm.
course, you would take a hit financially, no matter how much you save. That's
Yeah,
8 months of
yeah,
not getting anything in, di ba? So, I
for
think I
sure.
learned to be more grateful, to be in that situation, to have that opportunity to still have something. And being grateful forces you to, I wouldn't say force you, encourages you
Mm.
to want to do better. So, yun yung feeling ko na nagbago talaga with me because I am now more mindful because of how grateful I am of having this job. So, I think yun yung ina-apply ko ngayon. I can't really pinpoint maybe the technical stuff because yun nga, like
Yeah,
what I mentioned, I just try and work more. You heard from the past podcast na I would go there 3 hours
yeah.
before the game, even if nobody's there. Um, I think it goes without saying na dapat talaga mauna ka doon. Ikaw ang
Mm.
mag-aabang. But
Oo.
yeah, what really changed for me for the last 2 years, I think, is just the attitude that I have towards work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's really great that you got an optimistic point of view when it comes to the pandemic, because yeah, others struggled with negativity. I mean, we all had that for sure, with anxiety, like
Mhm.
what's gonna happen next, even for me as a student. But yeah, going to the next part of the interview, I wanted to ask about your upbringing and childhood. Like, people kind of forget or may forget that you were a volleyball player when you were
Mhm.
in college for UST. So I want to also ask about volleyball. Like, was that your first love as a sport, or did you do other activities when you were a
I
child
did.
before pursuing volleyball?
So I had a very active lifestyle when I was young because my brother used to play basketball. He used to play football and then taekwondo, I think, and then basketball. So growing up, I
Okay.
always saw him like that. I wanted to try out basketball, but I don't know why I never really got into it. But I remember even my brother like trying to um teach me yung proper form of like holding the
Oh
ball
yeah,
and like how to be like a T or something, parang
yeah.
gano'n. And I was like mga 7 years old. But the first sport that I really got into was baseball, actually.
Okay.
So where I was studying back in when I was in elementary, they made you choose um like a group in PE. So there's baseball,
Okay.
volleyball,
Yeah.
basketball, football, etc. And then I chose baseball. I had fun. I loved it. But then the year after, when we had to choose again, ako na lang yung mag-isa sa um baseball. There's no girls.
Oh.
And you know naman peer pressure when you're a kid na parang ano na, all my friends aren't here na. Dapat parang
Oh.
lumipat na ako. So that's where I transferred to volleyball. And then um a PE teacher saw me. He was forcing me to do advanced things na
Mm-mm.
like let's say for volleyball usually the basic serve is the underhand serve, yung parang
Yeah.
ginaganon.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So ako, no experience at all. Spike agad. Dapat overhead serve agad. Ganyan. Because you're so tall and all that. And then,
Mm.
the year after ulit, like, my coach just saw me walking around. Hindi ko pa siya coach noon. Sabi niya, anong height mo? I was 12, I was 5'6".
Yeah.
5'6" po. Punta ka sa Monday, part ka na ng team. That's actually how it
Wow.
started. Yeah. That's how it
Okay.
started
Okay.
for me. And then, I think, naging varsity ako before I even really started loving the sports, which sounds bad,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we go through our own journeys, diba? But
Mm.
that's how it started for me. And then 4 years of high school, fortunately got noticed by he's a legendary coach from LaSalle. So he's Coach Augusto Santa Maria. He was
Oh yeah,
coaching
I've heard.
he was coaching
Mm.
for UST at that time. I was invited. And then yeah, I got to play. I even got to play for the national team under him as well.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I heard about him from Tita Mosey Ravenna when I
Yes.
interviewed her, because yeah, she's also part of the UST volleyball team in the 90s during her college days. So yeah, that's why I never heard about him before, because when I was watching volleyball, yeah, he wasn't active na yata sa sport. But
Yes.
it's great that you mentioned that you played volleyball your whole high school life, and yun nga, you mentioned that you were varsity before you were like consistently wanted to pursue volleyball. So what made you stay? Like, what was the how did you sustain the love for volleyball? Was it the success that you were receiving or garnering that made you stay until college?
Honestly, it was the perks
Ah,
because
okay.
we didn't have the same perks, to be
Yeah,
clear.
yeah, yeah.
But
Mm,
it's free education. Of course, you have your scholarship.
mm,
Um, I don't have to worry about my accommodation while I was in school.
mm,
Uh, we had 3 meals a day. Meron kaming
mm.
allowance. It was a basic stuff talaga that athletes would normally get for college. That's what made me stay. At the same time, I was thinking, it's so hard to balance school and like a certain sport. But then
Yeah.
again, parang I guess during my first year, we had a bond kagad, and we were staying in one place. So,
Mm.
24/7 talaga, parang kapatid mo na yung kasama mo.
Oo.
And it's so hard to just randomly stop, especially with
Oo.
the bond, the the perks, the scholarship, that. So
Mhm.
together with love that you've developed also over the years, parang sobrang dami ng factors for you to
Mm.
just stop ng biglaan.
Mm. So yung
Mm.
pagiging player mo naman sa UST, I saw that you were a setter and you won a best setter award rin nung college days mo. So how was the recruiting system before sa UST, or is it more of tryouts? Like paano ka napunta naman sa UST?
Um, you know what? Don't quote me on this, but I heard din kasi, I heard kasi when I was going to UST na during that time daw, and a few years before I entered, that you had to be invited. So
Mm.
that happened to me. So that's the story that I know because I was invited also to get
Mhm.
there. Um that's yeah, I was invited. So it wasn't a tryout per se. You had to be invited and then they'd look at you, see if you fit, and then if you do, you stay.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Tapos as a
Mm.
setter naman, I wasn't actually a setter, but my batch that came in sa UST, if 14 yung players on the roster, 9
Yeah.
out of the 14 were rookies. That's my batch.
Wow.
Yung 9 na yon were all middle attackers. So, yeah. So, since mauubos yung team, our coach had to teach us to transition to a different position right away kasi if I remember it right, back then yung volleyball season was June or July. As in pagka-start ng school year. So you just
Mhm.
had that summer break to practice. So
Yes.
lahat kami our libero back then was Sherry Ann Balse, the sister of Ging Balse
Oh,
who's
yeah.
still playing right now.
Yeah.
She's like 5'8". I was 5'9", I was better. Ganon,
Yeah.
ganon. Sobrang tangkad nung team namin nun because we just had to change possessions for us to be ready for the UAAP in 2 months.
Mm. Yeah, that's pretty tough kasi nga sa volleyball, when you hear the stories then of the other volleyball players, na rinig mo na nahihirapan din sila mag-adjust ng position. So for you, gaano katagal din yun na nag-adjust ka ng pagiging setter? And alam mo naman rin yun na yung setter parang point guard yun. Na
Yeah.
ikaw yung nagko-control sa team. You know?
Uh, you know what? I think I can't say it. I think my first year was really my hell year No, for real. Kasi, I mean, I love the challenge, but it was 2 months. 2 months of trying to erase all of the
Mhm.
footwork that I know or I knew, like with me playing as a middle attacker from grade school to high school. It was 2 months of me, kahit yung ball orientation kasi, iba with
Oo.
setters and with attackers. So parang
Yeah.
just to give you an idea for, or the viewers an idea, if you're an attacker, when you jump, dapat nasa harap mo yung bola ng konti.
Oo. Mm.
When you're a setter, you should be under that ball, directly under that ball. Pag
Mhm.
ano ka, pag spiker ka, hindi pwedeng sa ilalim because when you spike it, pag ganun, yung palo, di
Yeah.
ba? So I
Yeah.
had to erase years of that. So it was hell talaga. Tapos our practice before, I distinctly remember it was 5:30 a.m. to 7
Wow.
a.m. and then 5:30 to roughly around 10 p.m. But since
Mm.
I was there was a lot of responsibility. Like for me to get it right away, I had to start training at 4 o'clock. So I was training from 4 in the afternoon to 10 p.m. Tapos meron pang umaga noon. And I would do that every day. So that was really hell physically.
Mm.
Mentally, it was so challenging because every time you couldn't complete a play, it was because, oh, kasi ang sama ng set ni Denise, ang taas ng set ni Denise, ang bilis ng set ni Denise,
Mm.
ang baba ng set ni Denise. Parang it's always the setter's fault.
Mm.
So, I guess my first year, I would say, nahirapan ako, but my second year was when I felt a lot more comfortable with it na. So, I guess between a year, a year and a couple of months before I felt confident na I could somewhat lead the team talaga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great that you were able to adjust. And syempre UST, expected rin naman na you will adjust and you will flourish kasi they have a great volleyball program or culture wherein they have, yeah, great players from all the years, even now with A. Laure and CC Rondina and all these players. But then, yeah, talking about the UST volleyball program during your collegiate stint, what was your overall takeaways from playing for UST and being in the best setter and playing with players like Angeli Tabacuero, who was a very good volleyball player? So how was that whole experience like for
I think it was life changing, to be perfectly honest with you, and not to be dramatic,
you?
but it really was. The thing that I'm doing right now, the people that I met through playing volleyball, some of them are really the reasons why I'm on cam, I'm covering sports. Kasi syempre, yung exposure mo with the UAP, back then we had the Shakey's V League.
Yeah,
So,
I
people
remember.
kind of, I mean, let's be real, di ba? Parang pag may exposure ka, mas kilala ka ng tao, they would probably take a chance with you na,
Oo.
well, life-changing siya when I look back and realize what I'm doing now is a lot of it really started because of the time that I spent in UST. But again, not only that, kasi nga, parang, I think before I even started working, natuto na rin akong, how should I say this, mas makisama because again,
Oo, yun, tama.
imagine 14 girls, 14
Mm.
young girls having to spend time 8 hours a
Mm.
day together.
Yeah, yeah.
And these 14 girls are super competitive. So,
Mm.
kahit gaano kayo ka-close, at one point magka-clash kayo ng magka-clash. And you learn how to adjust, you learn how to compromise. And I think that's something also na nadala ko rin in the outside world.
Mm. Yeah, you mentioned nga na yung volleyball nakatulong din with your job now as a host and as a PBA courtside reporter. So why didn't you continue playing in the pros in the volleyball, or was it because you had another passion, or parang you fell in love with hosting and being part using like your degree, and I think you were communications major.
Yes.
Why did you not continue
Kasi what happened, Diego, nung fourth year ko, my fourth year, my first UAP, yeah, first after the first game of my fourth UAP year, I got injured.
Mm-hmm.
I got injured in
Okay.
practice. Or parang my whole shoulder and then one-fourth of my back.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was hard kasi counted na yung UAP year ko because I played one game, 'di ba?
Um,
I was trying to
Oo.
get better. I was doing rehab, therapy, and I was going to class. I was going to training. I was still going to the games. Tapos sabi ko, my gosh, graduating ako. Like, why am I even squeezing everything in? Tapos nung time naman na yun, like legit league after
Oo.
college, parang it
Oo.
wasn't sustainable. Hindi siya katulad ngayon na, if you do decide to skip the corporate world, you can. Nung panahon
Yeah.
ko, my God, ang games namin, like honestly, before tinelevise yung UAP, we were playing at like 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. in the morning because nobody would watch. So why
Mm-hmm.
wait all the way up to the afternoon? Let's just get it over with. Umaga yung mga games. So there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really an avenue. And when I had to choose between trying to balance everything out, I was like, let's just focus on the studies. Kasi, I mean, I'm trying to walk around with like a loose shoulder. And how can I
Oo.
even say, how, I can't even write properly. So parang when I was weighing it, it just made sense na, let's just, throw in the towel na. Tapos, hanggang doon na lang yun.
Yeah, I understand din naman kasi for sure meron ka ring mga kaibigan na yun din yung ginawa nila that they decided to pursue something else like a corporate job nga or whatever
Mhm.
other passion they had. Kasi yeah, you wouldn't know na volleyball would be this way
This
during
big.
your
Yeah.
your time. So yeah, moving on
As in,
to
no
you.
idea at all. I got interviewed nga eh.
Mm,
Yeah. I got interviewed nga several years ago. I think it was the first time that volleyball game was played in, I think, Mall of Asia. And I was there. I was
oh,
watching. I was freaking out. I was freaking out for the players, and UST wasn't even playing. I think LaSalle was
oh,
playing during that time. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was looking around like, oh my gosh. Kasi,
mm,
again, my first year, maglalaro kami sa UP gym kami nun eh. Sa UP
mm,
gym, 8 a.m., no fans, like yung manonood sa'yo would always be just family members, not even friends, kasi usually Sunday yung game, just family members who would support
okay.
you. And then, what, 6, 7 years later, nasa Mall of Asia ka?
Mm.
Grabe, it's so surprising and I'm so happy na talagang pumutok na ng ganito yung volleyball sa Philippines.
Yeah. Did you see that coming ba from a player's perspective? Like you see it
No,
coming
not
into
at
next year?
all. Not at all.
Okay.
Because, excuse me. So, I think kasi gradual yung gradual yung pag-televise sa'min. I believe, if I'm
Mm.
not mistaken, my second year, ang tinelevise lang is the second round of that UAP year and then the
Yeah.
finals. And then my third year, yun na yung parang buong season. But I never saw it na parang it would blow up that big. Even if there was Shakey's V-League na, even if I was one of the people watching V-League when I was like fourth year high school, I think that's when we started it. I'm not, if I'm not mistaken also.
Mm.
2003, 2004. But I never thought that it would be something like this talaga. As in,
Mm.
mind blown pa din ako when I think of the times na naglalaro ako ng college na ganito pala talaga siya, kalaki ngayon.
Mm. Pero yun nga, speaking of lumaki yung sport dito sa Philippines na iba talaga like it's at the same stratosphere na siguro as basketball. Why do you
Mm.
think naman na nagki-click siya with the Filipino community? Because yeah, there are other sports like football. There was a certain number of years na sikat siya with the Young Husbands. Tapos ngayon, it's sometimes sikat yun pag nananalo yung Pilipinas. Pero iba pa rin yung level ng volleyball. So why do you think it actually clicks and the fans actually support the players a lot. Like the volleyball players could be even more popular than the basketball players now.
Well, you know what? I beg to differ. I think still basketball is the number one sport in the Philippines. But
Yeah.
going back to your question, aside of course from the talented players that we can watch, I think it boils down to consistent exposure.
Mm.
You wouldn't you wouldn't have this kind of coverage of UAP or Philippine volleyball if they didn't take a chance on the teams that were playing in the early 2000s. Pero dahil sinunod-sunod nila, nakita ng tao,
Mhm.
okay, it's something that I could watch, let's say MWF, TTHS, they could get to know players, they can follow the teams. It's really about consistent exposure and giving the athletes time to shine, an opportunity to
Yeah.
shine, show everybody that they deserve the support that
Mhm.
some of our players now are getting. So when you say, oh, bakit may time na sikat yung The Young Husbands, at that time you were showing every ASCAL game. 'Di ba? Bakit
Oo.
na yung Filipinas? I mean, they're killing it. They're going to the World Cup and we're showing the games. But for
Yeah.
us to have a bigger, I guess, bigger fan base or a greater support for some of our other athletes. Actually, I hate saying other athletes, but
Oo.
for them to have like yun nga better and greater kind of support for the other sports na hindi naman natin masyadong napapanood, kailangan talaga ng exposure, 'di ba?
Mm.
How are you gonna know players like yung mga nasa Pilipinas if you don't show them, 'di ba?
Yeah,
Alam
yeah.
lang natin World Cup. Yeah, may team sa World Cup pero sino yung maglalaro? Kilala ba nila?
Oo.
'Di
Hindi.
ba? So I think yun talaga yung kailangan, an avenue where um people can follow and yun nga where the athletes can show also na they're they're good enough for us to pay some attention. Kahit yun na lang muna eh.
Mm.
Kahit makatch mo
Mm.
lang muna and then sunod-sunod na yung para masundan yung mga atleta.
Yeah, I absolutely agree then. Like me as a fan, I mean, to be honest lang, I watched volleyball lang before pa konti-konti lang. And then, bibigyan nga sila ng exposure, tas may avenue as a fan manood. Like, yun, biglang ngayon, halos lahat ng games ng volleyball, whether UAP or PVL, I try to tune in if I'm not doing anything naman, tapos may game. On ko lang dyan sa TV and then pag exciting, diba, you'll tune in and
Yeah.
enjoy the sport. So yeah, that's why I love how volleyball has grown here in the country. And you mentioned also exposure, and I wanted to ask, since you mentioned that you had that mindset of switching to being a host and being a analyst pa for PSL and courtside reporter now. So what was your break, or what was the story on how you eventually worked with TV5 or Signal, and or was that the first job that you actually had as a broadcasting?
No, that's funny because another broadcaster, James Velasquez, I used to work with him also on
Oh yeah,
TV5.
yeah.
So si James randomly messaged me on Facebook. I always tell this story. That's why we're super close, ni James.
Mm.
He randomly sent me a message on Facebook. And hi,
Mm.
you're Denise Tan. You used to play volleyball for UST, right? So when I got the message, I'm like, sino to? Kasi, syempre, wala kaming connection eh. I really
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
know. Pero nang
Mm.
tinitignan ko yung mutual friends, puro sports people. Like
Oh,
in the
okay.
broadcast world or athlete, ganyan. So sumagot ako because inisip ko, baka naman I met him before tapos I can't recall lang. So
Oo.
sabi ko, yeah, yeah, parang, hi James, ganyan. And then he suddenly told me, are you interested to cover a volleyball game, a beach volleyball game at that? And I'm like,
Okay.
yeah, okay, sure, sure, but I have no experience. Sabi niya, don't worry. It's in 2 weeks, somebody will contact you.
Mm.
Fast forward to 2 weeks, somebody did contact me and they got me to go to Subic.
Oh yeah.
Lo and behold, it was an NCAA finals of the beach volleyball games. So, talagang baptism by fire. So, I got
Oo.
there and I was like, oh my goodness, like, sobrang blindsided as in. Pero, sige, bahala na. May partner naman ako eh. Tapos,
Mm.
I think that was my break, I guess. But,
Mm.
it took, I think, mga 3 months of no work. Tsaka ako binalikan ng TV5. Tapos nung binalikan na nila ako, they were like, oh, we want you to do interstitials, which like yung mga short features, mga 1 minute or 2 minuters. So that's how I started mga the dirty jobs, para mga ganon. Ikaw yung babiyahe
Oo.
sa Ilocos, ikaw yung babiyahe sa Davao, ganyan. Yung mga
Oo.
mahirap na coverage. Sige, biyahe-biyahe ka
Mm.
muna dyan. So I really try to work my way to where I am now naman.
Mm. Saan naman nanggaling yung passion mo yun for like storytelling, for broadcasting? Kasi you mentioned a lot about your volleyball career. But then yun, in college nga, you were a communications student. And then nung may opportunity, parang game na game ka eh. Kung ibang tao yun, baka they'd say no or say, yun nga, parang wala naman akong alam dyan or bakit ako, ganun. So yeah, baka kasi love mo na talaga yung pagiging behind the mic and, cover the games dati pa.
Um, I think nag-start siya for me, not really when I was doing play-by-play because play-by-play usually, you're just reacting to what you're seeing.
Oo.
But the love for telling stories, I think looking back, hindi na ako lumayo eh. Just the stories that some of my teammates had when I was in college. Um, Syempre, when you're younger, medyo limited yung exposure mo to different situations of the people around you. Tapos biglang
Mm.
nung college na, you see na, oh, this is what she had to do, this is what they had to give up, this is what they had to work on. And
Mm.
I realized sobrang daming athletes na ganun. Sobrang daming atleta na hindi lang siya ano eh. When they say parang blood, sweat, and tears, it's so much more than that. Ang dami-dami
Mm.
talaga nilang pinagdadaanan at sinasakripisyo. And I feel like they deserve it na people should know what they had to go through for them to
Mm.
appreciate more saan nanggagaling yung taong to. If they react a certain way inside the court, or maybe it's because of this. Negative man o joyous man yung galaw niya, at least alam nila. And it's also, for me kasi, I think, it's also nice to not just idolize a person because of what they can do inside a certain arena, but who they are also. Everybody's a role model. And
Yeah.
I think, ano yun eh, sa akin, hindi pwedeng atleta ako, tao ako. It's always gonna be, you're always gonna be one person. So, para
Mm.
sa akin, ang ganda rin na makilala nila both sides of the athlete.
Oo.
Kaya, yun. Kaya gustong-gusto ko talaga na may nalalaman ako about the players off the court.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for me, I'm also that kind of person. Kaya nga, nung pandemic nag-start na, I listen to like podcasts kasi dun yung parang platform ng athletes. Pag ni-interview sila, biglang dun ka may malalaman na hindi naman nila nasasabi pag nanalo sila ng best player of the game or may media session
Yes.
kasi may lang yung time. Pero pag podcast, comfortable sila with the host tsaka yung venue sa bahay lang nila dahil Zoom or StreamYard. So yeah, that's why I
Mhm.
enjoy learning a lot from these athletes also with the life lessons that they share. But yeah, after that said, you said that TV5 contacted you for those dirty jobs that you mentioned. So after that, what was the next venture that you did? Was that the PSL analyst already, or what are the other things you did?
Um, when they contacted me kasi, analyst kagad yon. So, we had to kind
Oh,
of we had to go back to earth ng konti na parang baby
Oo.
steps na. So, nag-courtside reporter ako for PSL. I did that for a year. And then, I did that for a year. And then they got me as an analyst. And then for the PSL also and other international or, yeah, whenever you would have volleyball leagues.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I started doing Sports 5 Center, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
the pre, half, and post game shows of the
I
PBA.
remember. Yeah.
So I did that for a year. And then again, baptism by fire, they were like, hey, do you want to do Manila Classico?
Oh.
That was my first courtside assignment.
Mm.
2017 Manila Classico. And I was like, sure, sure. Because in Bulacan pa, in the Philippine Arena. I was
Oh,
like,
I remember that game. Yeah.
let's do it, let's do it.
Yeah.
I was so stiff, but I was like, I'm here, I'm doing it.
Mm.
And then after nun, following year na, they started using me na as a regular courtside reporter. So yun lang yung
Mm.
progression. I just kept saying yes. They gave me
Oh.
more jobs. So okay.
Oh. Yeah, that's really great that you took advantage of the opportunity because it's easy for others to like yun nga, reject it and say the inexperience or other various reasons they could elaborate on or share. But yeah, great that you had that opportunity. But you said that you were an analyst before for volleyball and then you moved to courtside reporter for basketball. So how was that shift like for like the people that aren't in that industry? How different is it? What's the similarities? How is it like for
I guess the similarities really is just that you have to do your research.
you? Oh.
Yun lang. You have to try and get to know the people you're covering. For me, that's
Mm.
the most important part. You get to know the people you're covering. You, as in research galore. Research, I
Mm.
mentioned stalking earlier. The good kind lang,
Oh.
ha? Nothing, nothing
Oh.
dangerous. Um, and you really try to get to know them on a personal level. You introduce yourself, try to be friends with them. You can't rush it, but the more times they see you, the more they'll be comfortable with you. And eventually, kahit pang isang daang kwento nyo na minsan magugulat ka na lang, meron ka pang madidiscover na hindi mo alam about that
Mm.
athlete. To me, it's really the personal connection that you build. And I always say research, 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 because the person you're covering also would be more comfortable talking to you about things um, on and off the record if they respect you also. And the only way that they would respect you is if they know that you're doing your job right. So,
Mm.
mag-aral ka, paano, how do you say that? Befriend them,
Mm.
and really be genuine with them.
Mm.
So, I think yun yung similarities. Yung differences, nothing really. It's just that when you're doing play by play, you have to be quick. You have to say things that as it's happening. You can't
Oh.
really sugarcoat things. Um, and then when you're writing, you have more time to think about what you really want to write. Maybe use words na mas malakas yung impact. That's
Mm.
it. But you have to do everything on the spot din naman.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned a lot about relationships. And I remembered when I had Gretchen Ho here on the podcast, I asked her then this question. Like when because of she was an athlete before, na kahit hindi na siya athlete ngayon, syempre yung mga kinakausap mo, volleyball and basketball players, same interests kayo, same passion. I mean, you guys endured the same struggles then and the same accomplishments and when you were a player. So do you think na nakatulong yun sa'yo na
Most
yung
definitely.
players mas naging comfortable sila with you?
Most definitely, because even as simple as, let's say, imagine this. You're new courtside without any experience of maybe a coach exploding na galit, 'di ba? Siyempre
Mm.
mapapaatras ka. Like, what are you gonna do? Lalapit ba ako o hindi? But as an athlete, that's normal. Wala lang yan. You know?
Ah,
Siyempre, hindi ka lang tatayo sa harap ng coach.
ah,
Kung ito si coach, ito si team, hindi ka tatayo sa likod ni team. Baka madamay ka, di ba? But you
oo.
wouldn't have that kind of hesitation. That's super a simple example. Pero, yun nga, when players tell me about what's happening in practice, let's say somebody, should I say this? Kunyari somebody is saying something about, let's say, a venue na or a court na
Okay.
ganyan,
Oo.
o kaya
Oo.
whatever, ganyan. Alam nila na pwede nilang sabihin sa'yo kasi atleta ka eh, na parang, oh, binigyan ako eh. Okay lang yun, kasama talaga yun. They wouldn't say
Mm.
that to somebody who
Ah,
wouldn't understand that. So, I think
mm.
sobrang nakatulong talaga siya. Whether you're talking about things that you can actually report or things that are off the record, which you can use eventually if you have something na pwede mong itahi, na pwedeng
Mm.
pang-on ka, 'di ba?
Mm.
So, ang laking bagay talaga nung athlete to athlete connection for me.
Mm. Ayan, yun din yung sa tingin ko eh kasi even sa abroad like when I watch NBA or MLB or even dito sa local like yun sa tingin ko kaya din nakikita ko nag-excel din kayo na former athletes na nagiging broadcasters din yun kasi they use it like advantage sa kanila yung benefit to kasi kung friend nila yung player ganun may makukuha silang stories mas comfortable yung athlete mag-share. Pero yeah, you mentioned also na you've been a courtside reporter or you've been in the TV5 for the longest time. What's naman your opinion or like advice to people na, medyo traditionalistic pa mag-isip na sinasabi like jobs like these na hindi 9 to 5 job or hindi corporate job na sustainable pa din siya or it would still make you grow or would still make you, when you support your family, ganun. So how would you explain it, especially nung pandemic na wala kang job for 8 months?
First off, I don't think I owe anybody an explanation because we have our own paths. I mean, not to sound aggressive, no, Diego,
Ah,
but
hmm,
I chose what I chose because I love what I do. You
mm,
know, this is something that I choose to do. I'm not forced to do this.
yeah,
So, if we're gonna be talking about, let's say, hindi siya traditional 9 to 5, hindi ka mag-grow dyan, you don't know that because I personally felt the growth, di ba? Somebody can't
oo,
tell me na walang growth sa trabaho ko, walang progress sa
mm,
trabaho because I know that there is. I saw it, I felt it. Um, Going back to like what happened during the pandemic, of course, it was an unfortunate situation for everybody, hindi lang naman mga
mm,
freelancers. Pero dun din papasok yung, I guess, yung connections mo. Like, yeah, I didn't have work um, with TV5 for the last 8 months before I went into the bubble. Pero meron naman akong ginagawa outside. Because you
mm,
still have online posting, you still have um, online hosting. 'Di ba?
mm,
Online hosting and hosting. Madami pa rin
mm,
naman eh. You can still grow a business, like even a small business can be promoted or be
mm,
supported by people that you get to know through
mm,
the years. So for me talaga parang as long as you're happy with what you're doing and what you choose to do, then it doesn't matter if it's like a corporate job or like a freelance job or like a sundot-sundot lang thing. It doesn't matter. Basta
mm,
masaya ka, wala kang tinatapakan, 'di ba?
mm,
You feel the growth. That's what's important.
mm. So how about naman sa pagiging yun nga freelancer, pagiging sa media or vlogger, yung mga ganong kind of type na you do your own content or you do your own job, that you don't have a boss that tells you like what to do ganyan. It's more of like you venturing out yun nga, to various things to have substantial income for you and your family. So how do you have that constant mindset of like pursuing other things and being open to try out other things? Na you mentioned also na hindi ka lang naman PBA courtside reporter now. How do you have that mindset na you try out other things, na you have like 3 to 4 things that you do to have an income and that you enjoy pa rin that job?
I think it's not just income, ano kasi, income driven for me.
Mm.
I guess I'm in a situation din kasi that I don't have to support my own family. So I guess
Yeah.
that's the reason why I'm speaking this way.
Mm.
Um, but again, it's not always income driven for me. When I do try and venture out, it's just because ayoko matenga, for the lack of a better term. Alam mo
Yeah.
yun, like,
Oo.
okay, kasi when I got into the bubble, noong una kinabahan pa ako, like, oh my God, ang tagal ko nang hindi sumasalang, tagal ko nang hindi nagsusulat and whatnot. Pero it's
Oo.
just that, I guess it's just that inner athlete in me, that inner drive that you always want to, let's do something, let's
Mm.
get something going, let's try something out, whether that be really work or just trying a new hobby. Um, I guess that's just the drive that I have. And then
Mm.
eventually, may opportunities lang din talaga na dadating, and I try to take advantage of it.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great constant mindset to have for you. But going back to you, you mentioned na pagiging uh, courtside reporter, broadcaster, and basketball. Alam naman ng mga tao na male-dominated sport din siya, na PBA. So how was it like for you entering the PBA, na yun nga, halos guys, lahat ng coaches, ng players, and you need to approach them before the game or after the game? Hindi ba yun mahirap for you, or iniilang ka ba nung una? Like, what was the process for you in that facet naman?
Ako, I had a really, I wouldn't say easy time, but I think I was more comfortable doing it just because, let's say I approach a certain team and some of the players on that team, kilala ko na ng college. I would talk to that person
Mm.
first and then I would say, kunyari sa dugout, pwede rin pasuyo kay ganito, ganyan. Can you call him for me?
Mm.
Blah, blah, blah. So, yun yung mas nagpadali sa trabaho ko when I was starting. But, I think, I might be assuming, but I think it also helped na kilala nga nila ako as an athlete. So parang
Mm. Okay.
when I when I entered, they're like, "Oh, 'di ba ikaw yung volleyball player? Ah, okay, okay." So small talk muna. So I didn't really have
Okay.
a hard time. And then yun nga, when I would speak to coaches, lalo nung nag-uumpisa ako, my favorite thing to ask was always something emotional or mental side of the situation. Kasi technical,
Mm.
I wouldn't completely understand everything 100% because there are
Oo.
still times na when you approach a huddle, to be perfectly honest with you, sometimes you try and peek dun sa board and you
Mm.
understand, number one, muffled because of the crowd, the sounds.
Oo.
And then you look at the when you look at the board, you don't understand because every team has their own language, diba? So
Oo.
you're staring there, you're looking down, you're staring there. Okay, what am I gonna report? Okay, okay, let's go to the other side of it, the emotional, the mental side. So that was my favorite
Mm.
thing to do when I was starting, which was a different approach that I had with the coaches. So, parang sa akin, comfortable ako kasi when I did that kind of attack, I knew that they felt like parang I think they felt like I knew what I was talking about because I was coming from a
Mm.
place that I understood.
Mm.
Hindi ko ipipilit na technical, technical, technical when I don't understand
Mm.
everything and all the technicalities of the sport. Doon ako sa naiintindihan ko. Parang ganun.
Mm. Oo, yeah. Tama nga naman, and yeah, nakatulong rin nga for sure yung pagiging sa small talk. And because some people, they just go straight to the point, and sometimes syempre yun yung job mo, kala mo gawin, pero you do other things to yun nga, develop relationships and for them to be more comfortable with you. But if for a courtside reporter, there's like a stereotype, or sometimes you could hear discrimination or insulting words from fans because it's a male dominated sport, and people say that yun nga, you're just there to get like a husband or a boyfriend or whatever. Like they just say the most
What?
random things. They say the most random things to courtside reporters, diba? Like, because yeah, male dominated sport, even in like the NBA or those other sports, I'm pretty sure you've heard of these courtside reporters experiencing those. So ikaw, did you ever experience that, or did you ever feel uncomfortable in a situation wherein you needed to like call a friend or ask help from the people that you're comfortable with?
Not at all. Not at all. And I'm so
Mhm.
surprised there are actually comments are saying that they're there to get a husband because
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah.
that is the most,
Hmm.
I'm not gonna say it, but that makes
Yeah.
no sense at all.
Yeah.
Um, but going back, I've never experienced that. I've never had a time where I felt like I was so uncomfortable that I had to get back up or anything. I
Mm.
guess kasi nga when I entered, people knew me. Well, some of them knew me as an athlete na. And when I would interact with them, I wasn't interacting with them like as a fan or as somebody that wanted to get to know them on a personal level that would lead to us being married or anything or
Oo.
dating. When I
Oo.
would interact with them, I would make sure that it's on a professional level. And if we
Mm.
do have that interaction, a small talk, you know that I'm just trying to befriend you.
Mm.
So I don't think I also gave them a chance to act that way. The fans or the players or whoever's in the PBA, I don't think I gave them a chance. And I don't think I put myself in a position to be thought of that way. I try to be very, very professional with what I do. And like what I mentioned earlier, kanina, that's also why it's so important that when you get there, you have to know what you're talking about. Because when they see
Mm.
you as somebody who's there for work, then they know you're there for work. The respect will
Oo.
always be there, and they won't see you as the random female who's here to find a guy,
Mm.
which is so messed up, if I may say
Oo.
so myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question directly, no, I've never felt that. Thank God for the people in the league and the people that
Yeah.
I work with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Loka,
great to hear.
ba?
Yeah, that's great to hear kasi I've heard nga before na merong mga iba, like I think I don't know kung anong podcast 'yon, pero yeah, I've heard na merong mga iba
Wow.
they felt like sila Siege Tantenko. I don't know if you know her. Yun, I remember.
Oh
She
yeah,
was sharing NCAA, diba? Like she had other
I know
experiences. I
that. I
don't
know
know
that.
what it were, but then yeah, I just heard her sharing a podcast before, and si Franny Reyes din yata, pero yun, fans yata yung mga ano, hindi players or coaches ng UAAP. So
I
yeah,
guess with
yun
the
yung mga na...
sorry, but I guess
What?
with the fans, kasi since I used to play nga in front of a crowd, I've learned to just shut them out. Kasi syempre when
Mm,
you're playing, diba, even if you're doing well, basta hindi ikaw yung kinakampihan nung fan, they're gonna shout all these mean things to you. And
yeah,
what? I was 16 when I started playing. So at a young age of 16, I'm like, to not to be not to be
yeah,
mean, but you don't matter. What
yeah.
you're saying to me, like if you're trying to be mean to me, you don't matter because I'm trying to win.
Mm,
So I guess if people are saying that now to the courtside reporters, then that's just the attitude that I'm gonna give them if ever they do think of me or us that way. All I can say
mm,
is that they could just get a life and stop bothering me
oo,
because that's not what I'm about. So
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, true, true. And I guess that helps nga. Kasi yung fans talaga, kahit ako fan lang din, madami akong naririnig na sinisigaw nila pag game na kahit Ateneo yung kalaban ng Lasal. Like, I'm from Lasal. I wouldn't say that, like, kahit gaano ka-intense yung game or gaano ka-close. But then, yeah, moving forward, you also mentioned nga na yun nga yung mga you didn't never experience that. But then for the women rin, you guys are people say that yung mga broadcasters, yung anchor and analyst sa basketball, some people say na pang guy lang yan. But then you could see now on ESPN like Doris Burke has been an analyst for NBA games and Bea Daes Fabros has been on the panel also for UAP. So, nakikita mo na nag-evolve din yung industry and they're accepting na rin women sa broadcasting booth. So ikaw, what's your thoughts naman on that? Yung mga women then they're getting the opportunity that they deserve since yung knowledge niyo naman din mataas din naman sa basketball and other sports.
I think it's a long time coming for the leagues na to
Mm.
adopt that kind of system and not just, you know, box people out na ito lang, dapat lalaki lang dito, dapat babae lang dito. Because you know what, back in the day, madami din namang male courtside reporters. 'Di ba? So
Oo.
why not have a female anchor or female analyst? And I love it kasi again to me it's really just all about that opportunity that you give a person because it's it doesn't just affect that person that you're giving a job. It affects each and every I guess female na would dream of maybe getting to that point.
Mm-mm.
I'd like to share lang because this is a
Sure.
story that I did
Mm.
with Coach Mao. Coach Mao of TNT. She's the assistant
Yeah.
coach of TNT right now. And she was telling me before, you know what, when I was playing basketball in college, she would have never thought that she would be in the PBA, but she got an opportunity thanks to, the management. She was actually named as the head coach of the
Mm-hmm.
3x3 team
Yes.
in like a span of 1 year.
Mm.
'Di ba? So parang just giving them the opportunity. Tapos yun nga, right now, if there's let's say, a young basketball player na babae who would think na parang, oh, sana I'd like to get into coaching, but that's not really a girl's job. Alam na nila na hindi totoo yun because
Mm.
Coach Mao did it. Even what you said, Doris Burke did it in the NBA.
Mm.
Bea is doing it in the UAP.
Mm.
Diba? So, to me, it's been a long time coming and I hope na magtuloy-tuloy siya and they do it for a long time and they open doors for a lot more people.
Yeah, for sure. It's exciting kasi nga, yeah, these women din naman, like si Doris Burke, when I listen to her sometimes, like, no offense to the other, like, guys, but I learn more from her than the other ESPN analysts, for
Because she
instance.
used
Like,
to play basketball also.
yeah, I've heard na she used to play and yeah, madami siyang nasasabi and yung mga sinasabi niya pa minsan like other people wouldn't have like the courage to say it but it's true and then they'll minsan
Ah,
magva-viral siya sa Twitter. I'm pretty sure you've seen that na lalo na pag big game like people catch it na oh she said that story ganyan. So that's why I think there shouldn't be discrimination. Dapat may at least equality sa position na yun kasi kaya rin naman ng babae.
for sure.
Mm. Yeah.
Tsaka, I mean,
So yeah.
who's to say that one gender can't do what the other gender can do? Parang huh?
Mm-mm.
Bakit?
Oh,
Bakit?
yeah.
Anong limitation? Like, I really don't get it.
Oh, yeah. That's why. That's why. But then, yeah, moving on to the social media naman, I wanted to ask you a question since you mentioned a lot about, yun nga, you research a lot and you look at the social media accounts of these players to delve deeper into possible stories or questions that you could ask them for the next report that you have. And then there's also some negative stuff like, yeah, you mentioned yung mga fans, madaming sinasabi about the game, about the player or about the referee, ganun. And you could see that. Like, I know you're a volleyball fan na yung volleyball community, they could also be toxic kahit sabihin mong supportive sila. Like, the recent Den Lazaro thing na nag-viral siya about the whole thing about Choco Mucho. So ikaw,
Sa'yo
how do
galing
you approach yeah, how do you approach the social the social media aspect of being on the camera and being a host? Siyempre, for sure, madami ka ring followers, madami ring tao na may sinasabi about what you do.
Um, Honestly, when I was starting out, I used to be so paranoid about it because syempre, you care about your job. You know, I always say, pag nawalan ka na ng pake, um, pag nawalan ka na ng pake, then you're not going far because
Oo.
you have to care about your job, di ba? But I was at a point when I was starting out na, okay, nag-cam ako. Okay, I go to Twitter. What did people say about my report? Like, let's say a friend at home is watching. What did you think about my report? This was like, what, 8 years ago when I was really starting.
Mm.
But then, you know, sometimes I'm sure you've had interviews na, oh, that was a really, really good interview. And there would be times na
Oo.
parang, sakto lang. But
Oo.
sometimes when you tell yourself, oh, ang ganda nun, and then you see online, pangit naman ng show na to, or pangit naman ng episode na to,
Mm.
maglalaban yung emotions mo and yung feeling, yung naisip mo about it. Tapos
Mm.
nung dumating sa point na yon, when that was happening to me, sabi ko, why? Like, why am I even doing this to myself? If I felt
Mm.
good about it, if my producers felt good about it, if my partner that day didn't say anything at all, then it probably was a good show. It probably was a good coverage. Walang
Yeah.
boss na tumawag, walang
Yeah.
memo, 'di ba?
Yeah.
Because fans will always have something to say, 'di ba?
Mm.
So, you just take in the good together with some of the bad, but you learn how to filter them out. Kasi hindi naman pwede
Mm.
puro good lang, 'di ba? So, you just
Mm.
filter yung mga medyo below the belt na, yung medyo alam mo na parang napasobra yung free time, you just ignore them. Ganun
Oo.
kasi yun eh. Oo.
Mm. How about naman the positive impact it could bring to the athletes or yun, to the broadcasters then? For sure, kung walang social media, you wouldn't have like these other ventures that you pursued outside of being a PBA courtside reporter. So what would you say is the positive impact naman of social media, especially social media capital of the world kaya tayo or something?
Um, I guess for me, yung personal positive impact ng social media in my life, just affects my work pa din talaga because,
Oo.
number one, get to see I get to see more ideas that I can explore when I try
Mhm.
to think of stories nga. Um, I get reactions also from fans, from coaches, other players, which I can explore ulit. You
Mm.
can get reactions eh, di ba? O, sinabi ni Diego, sinabi ni ganyan. What's your comment
Mm.
on that? Puro, sa akin, puro work, ano lang siya, work related. Um, I guess positive also of having that connection with the fans is, you know, for me, you don't have to feel guilty kasi of feeling good about your job. So, pag merong pumuri sa'yo, then fine. Like, thank you. But you
Mm.
have to allow yourself also to feel good about it. Kung may 10 nakakapansin o may nagsasabi na, pangit namang magsalita nito, pangit naman ng ganito, gawa nito. You take that
Oo.
one person who was happy and you treat it as, I made somebody happy today.
Oo.
'Di ba? Kasi parang if you focus on the negatives, like, it's just gonna bring you down. So, again, just going back, filter lang ng filter. Filter the positives, filter the negatives. Baka naman puro positive ka din. Medyo lumaki na yung, ano mo, 'di ba? Ma-hinder ang growth kapag gano'n
Mm.
naman. So, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, you mentioned a lot about, what do you call this? You mentioned a lot about that. Na you filter it, and you as a courtside reporter, people could say other stuff that you wouldn't agree with. But being a courtside reporter, and you achieving these milestones or accomplishments you've achieved, what's like your ultimate dream, or what are your ultimate dreams pa of lasting in this broadcasting industry
Hmm.
as a courtside reporter? Baka meron ka pang gustong maabot.
Well, I did it na in the past, pero I would want to do it lang on a, I guess, a regular basis. But I'd like to go back to covering volleyball games. I'd like
Mm.
to explore also being uh, part of the panel for basketball games.
Oh yeah.
Um, I'd like to do studio shows more, like a sports show. We
In the
did that
game. Yeah,
in
I
the
see.
game, but
Yeah.
a few years back also we had that. We had Sports Center Philippines.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'd like to do it lang, I guess, on a regular basis kasi um ngayon syempre there's a lot going on tapos medyo unti-unti pa lang na it's been a year simula nung nakabalik tayo na medyo normal, 'di ba? So everything still
Mm.
adjusted. Medyo matagal talaga yung process. Um I guess in the future also, given a chance, I'm kind of reaching here, pero given a chance, I'd like to maybe part of like a sports program for a certain university or organization. Sorry, not outside TV5 pala, but just giving you my goals lang din.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Oh.
but with the shows, with TV5, I guess just being involved more in a lot of sports also. That's why I like doing the studio shows because that's
Mm.
chance kung saan ka pwedeng mag-feature pa ng ibang sports aside from what we're covering now like in the UAP and PBA and PVL.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. Sana naman, like, you've been doing well. Like, I always listen to you nga, and you've been there, like, yun nga, sa bubble, it helped that you were still there, and then now na you're still doing it, and I'm pretty sure TV5 knows that you'll be with them for a long period of time. But how about for the others naman that like me, I wanna be like in sports media? Ano yung mga dapat namin, like, people like me that that's supposed to be in our mind talaga when we wanna pursue something like this after we graduate from college or something like that.
Number one, I think talaga is there's no other way around it. You have to do the work. You have to
Mm.
learn you have to learn how to think quickly. Kasi you have to think on your toes like when you're part of the panel. You have to practice how to write. I learned that
Mm-hmm.
late in the game. So you have to learn how to write not just simple reports, but sometimes you're asked to do certain features. Um, research, and most importantly, just say yes. Just say yes. Even if you have no idea what they want you to do, say yes and then sandamakmak na aral. Because you will the experience is what will teach you talaga. So when you're there na, you experience everything, bahala na. Like let's just learn while we're there. Pero ang ganda ko may baon ka. I believe na experience talaga yung makakapagturo sa'yo. Like when I was telling you, ako always baptism by fire sa PSL, sa PBA, everything.
Mm.
Kahit yung mga sports center stints ko back then,
Mm-hmm.
it was just like, do the show, ganyan. Um, so yeah, you learn while you're there, but it helps a lot kung sobrang dami mong baon.
Oo.
Diba? Ang bilis mo mag-isip. You can do play-by-play, but what can you say about the player? What's interesting? Like,
Yeah.
what can you bring to the table that others can't?
Mm-hmm.
And you only get to discover that if talagang may mahalungkat ka na na
Mm.
iba from what other people know or like what the public knows.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So before we wrap up with the podcast, I ask my guests these certain questions that I want to ask you as well. So I know you watch the NBA and you know what happens in the league, and you know that the players are more vocal with social and political issues after nung bubble. And yeah, they've been doing it now. When they know something's wrong, they express it on their social media so that the Americans get educated. When it was near the elections, they do that. When there's societal issues in their country, they express what they feel about it. And yeah, you mentioned also kanina, you can't separate like the human from like the player or the athlete. So ikaw, what's your opinion as a sports personality and an athlete on athletes becoming more expressive now on social media? Because before, like, Filipinos are more laid back and shy, but now, like, nung nagka-campaign for elections, and now pag may alam nilang mali nangyayari sa bansa, sasabihin nila or e-educate nila yung mga followers nila on the certain issue.
Um, Good for them. You know, athlete ka o hindi, personality ka o hindi, you have every right to express whatever you want to express. Ang take ko lang dyan is, yes, you want to educate people, but you don't force it on them. So you
Yes.
try to give them facts. It's up to them if they want to accept it or not. But
Mm-hmm.
if you want to voice out something, then by all means, you have that right to be expressive as long as you're sticking to facts. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what's important. If you want to influence people because you think this is the right thing or the right whatever, then go ahead. But again, just don't force it on them.
Yeah.
Kasi the same way that you have the right to feel that way, they also have the same right to whatever or however they want to react to it.
Tama, tama. Yeah. So I agree with that. So yung next question naman, if you had the opportunity to have dinner with five people, dead or alive, who would you invite?
Oh my gosh. Five, ang hirap. Michael Jordan, number one, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my, ang hirap, Diego.
Yeah. It's from All the Smoke podcast sa States. Maganda yung
Mhm.
question nila, kaya ginagamit ko.
Michael Jordan,
Mm.
Frank Sinatra. Oh my gosh. Uh, ooh. Oh my God. Wait. I'm blanking out. Um, Pwede ba dalawa lang? Wait, let me think. What did I say? Jordan, Frank
Frank
Sinatra,
Sinatra.
the writer of Godfather. I'm sorry, I cannot name names. I don't know who the main
Yeah.
writer is.
Yeah.
As a group, the cast of Friends, I'm choosing
Ah,
them as
okay.
one.
Yeah.
And um, oh my, oh this is hard. Ah, I know. Wait, I don't know. Four na lang. Masyado
Ah,
na matagal
okay.
na natin.
Okay lang, okay lang. Okay, sige, that's fine. Surprise
Okay.
guest na lang daw yung fifth. Pero for the
Oo.
final, for the final question naman, since you know that I invite people through email lang and through social media, and yeah, that's how I try to bring people here, since I don't like work pa naman in any yeah, I mean, I work for I mean, I'm from the Lasallian, but I don't work yet from any media outlet. So who do you suggest would I invite here on the podcast to have a great story then to tell, and who would be a great person kahit makipagkwentuhan lang about current sporting events?
Have you talked to RK Ilagan?
Not yet.
Try to get him on board. He has a fascinating story. His life before he got into the PBA.
Mm.
Actually, ang daming players. Kung pwede ko lang sabihin lahat dito, but it's not. Nasabi ko na siya sa reports ko, and it's gonna be a long, long story. Um, would suggest also if you is this on the record pa din?
Yeah, but if you don't wanna, if I can cut it if you don't want, or you could tell me later after.
Sige, later I'll
Okay.
tell you later, but it's an incredible story of a person that's been involved in the PBA
Mm-hmm.
for the last 26 years, but people don't know him. I'll tell you later.
Mm. Okay, okay. That's gonna be if he says yes, then that's gonna be fun. If like, yeah.
Yeah, tignan natin kung makokontak mo yon, pero I'll tell you later.
Okay, okay. So
Hmm.
those are your two suggestions.
Sino pa bang wala kang gine-guess? Parang ang dami-dami mo ng guest dito.
Hindi naman. I mean, yeah. But then 80 plus episodes. But then yeah, yung
80
mga
plus?
colleagues mo na guest ko na. Sila
Ah,
Magu,
okay.
sila Carlo, sila Sir Sev, Miko Halili, Boom. Yeah, I guessed them.
Oh, Apple! I was talking to
Oh
Apple
yeah.
earlier.
I
You can
haven't
guess
guessed him.
Apple. Si
Okay,
Apple ang
okay.
daming storya because Apple has been a long time basketball fan. I'm sure in detail, sobrang dami niya share sa'yo. Yeah, that's my
Okay.
number one suggestion pala. Number one suggestion, Apple David.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I've seen her also a lot na in the PBA kasi nga avid fan ako. So yeah, naririnig ko kayong dalawa sa PBA. So yeah, thank you so much again, Denise, for joining me here in my podcast. And ikaw, do you have any final message before you go?
Yes, thank you to everybody watching the DVD show. 80 plus episodes, hopefully
Mm.
100 soon.
Yes.
I want to congratulate you, Diego, for an
Mm.
amazing job. Hindi lahat may tiyaga na
Uh,
mag-email blast kumbaga at
yeah.
maghanap ng bagong makakausap. So I
Mm.
hope 100, 150, 200, and I hope the show evolves and I hope it lasts for a long time. And I'm so happy that you stuck around and you listened to me ramble for an hour or so.
Yeah.
Um,
Of course.
thank you for having me.
Yes, of course, of course. So before you go, is it okay if we take a picture?
Of course.
Okay, I'll take it from here. Okay, one, two, three. Okay, thank you so much again, Denise, for joining me here in my podcast and stay safe.
You too. Bye bye.